This is Startup Series Latam, where we're about to take you on a journey through the dynamic world of Latin American entrepreneurship. In this show, we'll explore the stories of visionary founders and leading VCs who are transforming the region.
The most successful companies, the ones that have made the biggest impact, are the Latin Americans, by far. Latinos know how to build with the least available resources. Tremendously scrappy, tremendously smart, super talented teams. I invest in people, and in people that I know that are going to be able to pivot as many times as needed to get the company to the next level.
Welcome to Startup Series Latam, where we are inspiring líderes. I am so thrilled to welcome an inspiring leader from Spain, Laura González, founder and CEO of Venture City, a venture capital fund and accelerator that focuses on supporting tech startups. With over $140 million on her management, she's invested in over 100 seed to Series A startups in 14 countries. Laura and I have become close friends since we both became a part of the Henry Crown Fellowship desde España. Laura, bienvenida.
Un placer estar con vosotros. Thank you for having me here.
I'm just fascinated by your journey and your big heart, and I know that our viewers are going to learn so much from you. You know, your journey has taken you, Lau, from Facebook, eBay, Siemens, to founding the Venture City. What sparked the idea for the Venture City, and how did these experiences at all of these big places shape your journey to get there?
So, you know, I was just telling my cousin before coming here that I never planned anything in my life. I've always have been, let's work in something that really has a purpose and a meaning for me. And let's do the best I can to take that job to the next level. And somehow, the universe conspired so that I was going to be in tech despite not being an engineer. I'm very ingenious, but I'm not an engineer. So
you didn't study, what did you study?
I studied media communications because I wanted to be exactly where you guys are. And somehow at the time, 1996, 1997, internet started. And I was like, this sounds like a cool thing. Nobody knows a thing about this. I want to jump into it. But again, not being an engineer, being more like someone that product, focused or builder in that regard. And so my journey is a total accident, unplanned from day one, but somehow a very happy one. Lots of failures in my journey, but lots of successes too that I do celebrate. And I think that the thing that has the common ingredient has been, let's make sure that I work in something that I want to wake up every morning to, and that has a meaning and a purpose for me. Because again, I didn't plan anything.
But you planned something, right? Facebook, eBay, Siemens, somehow you landed in the right places.
In the best companies, in the best moment.
There's this energy to you that I'm always so drawn to, and I can see it as you're like almost jumping out of your chair.
Yes.
But there's also a work ethic, and there's an instinct that comes with that. I want us to start with the Venture City in terms of your vision for it.
Yes.
And I read that it champions startups that are needed, not nice to have.
Correct. Yes.
So tell me about that.
So when I was I lived in Silicon Valley for very many years, and when I was there, I as an angel investor, I started to support founders that were under the radar. Under the radar there means if you don't have friends that works at Google or at Meta or at any of the big companies, or if you didn't go to Stanford, etc. Basically who I was, right? I came from Madrid, studied in Universidad Europea de Madrid, who knows about that, in the US, and I was kind of like an underdog somehow.
Like an outsider.
An outsider, yeah. So, and I started to welcome entrepreneurs that were coming from Europe or from Latin America or from different parts in the US that somehow landed in the Bay Area and wanted to visit the Facebook campus, or that wanted to learn about how did we work at the company, and I supported them and I learned, with them. And I started to invest in some of them. And I was like, isn't this interesting that the traditional venture capitalists of the Bay Area, normally they invest in guys that are coming from, I don't know, Stanford, Berkeley, Carnegie Mellon, the traditional, super well-known universities. And I was like, no, there's a lot of super talented people. I believe that talent has no zip code. So there's a lot of super talented people that come from Brazil, Venezuela, España, Switzerland, so many other places that are not known for the venture kind of like abilities, and therefore there's very talented people. And that's how I started, and that was kind of like the embryo for
the Venture City.
The Venture City, investing in below the radar, underdog, no zip code, famous, kind of like people that are doing extraordinary things that affect the core pillars of our society: health, finance, jobs, and of course, more into the commerce world, e-commerce enabling, which I believe that's my past at eBay. E-commerce was going to be a big thing, right? So these are kind of like the main pillars that we kind of like
Of a society,
of
right?
the society. How can you do business? How can you create better jobs, better quality for more people?
How can you stay healthy?
How can you stay healthy? And of course, what is the minimum basic services that you can, financial basic services that you can give to people? And that's how it started.
And I love that you touched on these societal pillars, because I want to get to, the fundamental difference between founders and VCs in Latin America versus the US.
Totally.
Do you think that in Latin America, there is an opportunity to really create and invest in companies that are almost filling a gap where governments have failed, whereas in the US, we're creating the 100th throw pillow company. What's the point of that, right? So tell me about those differences.
Totally. I think that the entrepreneurs are obviously the challengers of society everywhere you look at, even here in the US, even though the US in so many ways is more advanced, and in so many others is definitely not advanced. So we see both kind of like sides, right? If I look into my portfolio of companies, and I have companies in San Francisco, in Miami, in New York, in Austin, Texas. I have companies in the UK, in Germany, Switzerland, in Angola, in Spain, obviously Portugal, and Brazil, Colombia, Uruguay,
You're the United Nations, Laura
Yeah, we're the United
González.
Nations of venture capital. So because we look into the talent, we don't look in where that talent is based. No zip codes. For us, we don't care about zip codes, just the talented people where they're from. The most successful companies, the ones that have made the biggest impact, are the Latin Americans, by far. So if now we go into the numbers of my fund, which are the top performance companies? The Latin American ones. It's very cool to have companies in San Francisco. It's very cool to have companies in New York. It's very cool, but the impact, the multiple that we are getting back, the highest is the Latin American companies. And let me tell you why. Because I think this is thinking about the US and Latin America and even Europe. Latinos know how to build with the least available resources. Tremendously scrappy, tremendously smart, super talented teams, very remote, very used to kind of like go through the ups and downs that their societies are going through every time. The US is very rigid. The talent in the US and Europe, because they're stable economies, stable societies, stable everything, when something awkward happens, a pandemic, almost a recession or anything, people get scared and they get kind of like, they freeze.
You get stiff. You're not
stiff.
as nimble.
But the Latinos, let's build a tunnel, let's go up the side, let's jump forward. It's kind of like, oh my God, these guys really know how to reinvent themselves. So it's a fast, and in fact, you will see that more and more Latinos are building amazing companies in the US.
Yes.
Or not only Latinos, immigrant founders. And if you look into the top companies in the US in tech, at least where I devote my time and passion, most of them are led by immigrants nowadays. HP, El Señor Lores from Spain, one of the biggest companies in tech. Meta, Javier Olivan from Spain, so many others, Brazilians and people from India that are leading the top companies.
And when you talk about that the Latin American founders are the ones that have had the most impact, do you mean in revenue or societal impact, or both?
Both, because when a Latin entrepreneur is successful, he becomes a role model for that circle. And when they become a role model, all the kids and their friends are like, oh, he was able to do it, so can I. You see? I think that the US, because it's been traditionally very successful, and Europe, all those role models exist already, right? But in Latin America, either they existed, but they wouldn't be open about it because of security reasons, or they did not exist. And what I'm seeing right now, at least in those in technology, is that they're willing to share, they're growing very fast, they're truly making a difference from those little zip codes in the middle of somewhere in Chile to boom, building companies that conquer both America's North and South.
And you're right about what happens in the ecosystem when one person does it, because it makes the ecosystem start to flourish, and then you can transform entire societies, countries, and the region with maybe that one founder, right, that you supported. And that's even despite the downturn in venture capital that we saw in 2021. You're telling us that, which is great news. When you talk about the Venture City and these, over 100 companies in all of these places around the world that you've supported, what's the magic formula? If a founder is looking at you now saying, wow, I wish that Laura would include me in her portfolio, what's the magic formula or ingredient for you to say that one's a winner, and for you to say that's maybe not the right fit?
So, because we invest really early stage, we do tickets that go from 2 to 5 million in the case of Series A, and in the seed platform we used to do from 150,000 to 500,000. The only thing in common that we have in this particular, in early stage, is the people. I invest in people, and in people that I know that are going to be able to pivot as many times as needed to get the company to the next level. It's not that I invent in the product that they have in that moment. Of course, I need to understand and share the passion for that vision that that entrepreneur has. But at the end of the day, what I look at when I meet a founder is like, would I work for him or for her? Check. In the worst case scenario, would we be able to work together through the ups and downs? That's a very important question, because again, building a company is like building a family or building any kind of relationship. It goes through, you imagine it like this, like a linear?
It's not linear, it's not linear.
It's a mess. So those questions that come to my mind in those very first moments are key. Obviously, we need to understand that if he has a problem or she has a problem and they make the first call, I want that first call to be the Venture City answering. I want us to be the first ones.
So you are one where you like to be very involved.
Oh, of course. I built companies myself. Some of them were a disaster. Some of them went really well. So I know that building a business, I'm not, this is why for so many years fighting with my team, I didn't consider ourselves as a venture capitalist. Because venture capitalist sounds as someone that only wants a return on their investment. Of course I want a return on my investment, but at the same time I want a return on that society, a return on that, on that team, meaning that how can we work together on something that can be beyond just capital,
that can generate a ripple effect of positive change.
Exactly. I truly believe when a woman uses the word impact, normally people think, oh, she's working at a nonprofit. No, I'm not working at a nonprofit. I love capital. But I believe that we can use capital to really take societies and products and technologies to the next level. We just need to be fair about giving it to the right people in the right moment, no matter where they are. So that is what really, really passionates the Venture City. And what we try to see in that first time that we meet a founder, I love to take them for lunch. I love to see their kitchens. So I travel to all over the world to see their teams, where they work together. If I could meet their family, I would love to meet their family.
Que si no están listos para que Laura se meta en la cocina, quizás no es.
And at the same time, I bring them in my house. They meet my family. They're always invited.
You like to be part of the cooks in the kitchen. Absolutely.
Yes. So it's a very mutual relationship. I think that for many years, when I built my first company in 1999, 2000, it was the people that hold the capital and we, the entrepreneurs. And there was a huge division between us. But what we're trying to do now is, hey, we're part of the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur too. I'm building my own firm.
And that's what's unique about you, because you're a founder yourself.
Yes.
Do you think there's this notion that founders and investors are not equals?
Yes, I think that for very many years, the ones that managed the capital were the ones that had the key to success. And somehow, at least in Latin America and Europe, which are underserved, of course, Africa and Southeast Asia, right? But in these two regions where we are operating heavily, there was this notion that, there were not very many venture capitalists and there were a ton of entrepreneurs. Therefore, the ones that managed the capital seemed to be kind of like inaccessible.
A step above.
Oh, a step above, beyond the good and bad, like, you see. And in the last, I would say 10 years, in the US, we've seen that the cycle, of course, they've been leading this substantially, that entrepreneurs became founders. Not only you build a company, you sell it, you make everybody to make money, your teams, your investors, and yourself, but also you're reinvesting in the next, in the next cycle, right, in the next generation. So thanks to all these amazing entrepreneurs in the US that started this trend of investing in the next generation, many of us that have been executives and entrepreneurs have followed. In my case, I am based in Miami and I try to do it from Miami to the world. But still in Latin America, there are not very many. The few that exist are extraordinary, but there are not as many. So for very, very many years, you would see that entrepreneurs would come to you like, hey, Laura González-Estéfani, I know that you...
Like revering.
Like revering. I was like, no. It should be the other way around. It should be the other way around, or at least mutual.
Absolutely.
I have something for you, and you have something for me, that we work together, and we, in the good terms, we can build something extraordinary.
So let me push this further. Do you think that unequal relationship that existed in Latin America and that is beginning to change is because the few folks that had capital maybe come from these legacy families and they've always held on to capital, whereas the founder was definitely in a position of, trying to make it upward in the world?
I think it's just that it's very different when an entrepreneur manages capital than when a family office manages capital. Family offices, most of the time, unless you're talking to the owners were entrepreneurs back in the day. It's tremendously fun to work with, normally their grandparents, to talk to them and understand their story and how they built their empire and how they're these entrepreneurs. The problem is that the middle management in the family offices don't enjoy taking excessive risks. We're all about risk, right? We love uncertainty and navigating, very hard times. So that is a problem that most of the times in the US, when all these super amazing new funds, we're talking about Graph Ventures, we're talking about NFX, we're talking about all these new funds that have been created in the last 10 years that are built by founders and operators. You totally feel it in the conversation, And the same way happens when I sit down with a founder and the founder treats me like a founder myself.
Right.
So it has to come in both ways. Like, you're building your company, I am building my company too. My one is a fund, yours is a fintech or an energy related company, etc. So that mutuality is exponentially growing, but still you can see sometimes people kind of like afraid of,
like walking on eggshells because of this reverence.
Yeah.
And you are...
And by the way, Mariana, sorry to interrupt you. I love when founders come to us and they kind of like tell us, ask us, what do you have to offer me?
I love that.
Apart from capital.
I love that.
That is the question. It's like, oh my God, nice. Now it's time for me to sell what we can do here.
Because it's a marriage.
Because it's a marriage. It's a marriage for money. Normally it's a complex marriage, but this one needs to work out. So totally.
Absolutely. And you are leading the way in a movement where founders become funders.
Yes, correct.
So all of this goes back to that passion that you bring, Lau, and that instinct that is very sharp in you. Anyone who's your friend, who knows you in the business world as well, you trust your gut.
Yeah.
And you've always trusted your gut. When you talk about your journey not being linear, you followed your instinct through and through. Even in that first opportunity when you took on a job at Facebook.
Yes.
You were heavily pregnant.
Heavily.
Your mom even told you not to take the job.
Oh, my mother was horrified.
So how did you follow your instinct then? And tell me about What's your advice for entrepreneurs trusting their gut nowadays who are listening to you?
And that was 2008, and I was working for eBay. I was super pregnant of my second child, and there was this huge financial crisis all over the world, and I got fired, pregnant, fired. I was like, okay.
Is that even legal?
Well, there was a negotiation, it was a good negotiation for me, but I was kind of like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now? And those things that happened, a dear friend of mine, Javi Olivan, that I worked with him at Siemens, had moved into, he's now the COO of Facebook. He had moved to, with a scholarship to Stanford. He met Mark over there, and he said, hey, Laura, we're looking for people at Facebook. And I thought that Facebook was the devil at the time because, I mean, people remember, we don't remember now, but the web was anonymous. You wouldn't share anything private or personal on the internet at the time, 2008. Now it's unthinkable, right? We share everything.
We share too much.
We share too much. So I was like, what? The Facebook? And
the Facebook?
The Facebook.
With Mark?
It was
Mark?
the Facebook at the time. But I saw, I never went to college in the US, so I didn't have an EDU email.
Right.
So I could see what I could see that they would show me. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. This either can go to the moon, which is what happened, or it can be something, another learning, or you earn or you learn, but you never lose, right? So I took the chance and I loved it. And I was the first one in Europe, and, working with Javi, and it felt very lonely at many times, but very rewarding because, you put yourself to the limits of what you can do. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating. But you see, I always say that one door closed to me, eBay, which I love, is a company that I love. They closed the doors on me at the time, but then a bigger one opened.
Oh my God.
Just in front of me. And I took it. And I remember that I got rejected by Google and I got rejected by so many other companies because my curriculum is not spectacular at all. And if you meet me, either you can love me or you can just run away and say, oh my goodness, this lady is...
Who cannot love this face? And for those listening, who cannot love this voice?
It depends on the
this
day.
raspy, sexy voice.
It depends on the day. But I did play a big bet on that.
And you were the
company.
first Facebook employee in Spain.
Yes, outside the United States, in fact.
That's insane.
Outside the United States, I think that Elmer was already in Canada. Yeah. In Europe, I was one of the first.
First Facebook employee in Europe.
Yeah.
And yet you
The office was my house. The office was my house. I was breastfeeding my baby boy, and I was in a Skype call with my team because we didn't have budget for offices at the time.
That's crazy.
We didn't. It was my computer, my home. The internet that I did pay at home. So that was all to start Facebook.
Y el resto es historia.
And the rest is history.
When you look at your path and when you say, I didn't have a perfect curriculum or resume, many would look at you now and think, oh, she probably went to an Ivy League school, she was probably a straight A student.
Not at all.
Or
I just go to Ivy League schools not to just give a talk or talk about, but I
can put that in your
resume. I was
resume.
never accepted as a student in any of these.
So what's your message for those listening to you right now who don't have the Ivy League diploma and come from places that aren't necessarily these engineering or tech backgrounds?
Yes, I would say that follow your passion. Waking up every morning to a job you hate kills you every day. And honestly, it doesn't matter, at the time I didn't have a financial support. I didn't, but I was sure that I just need to work on something that I knew I could give 500% of Laura. So, and for sure there would have been jobs that would have paid me more. But this one really got my energy every morning. I was extremely excited to wake up in the morning to work on something that I truly believed in, And that has been the common theme of my career, always waking up to something where I can be the best of myself. So for those that are young, thinking about their careers, for those that are in the middle of their careers, for those that are just about to leave their careers, think about what you love to do and just focus on that. And the universe will plot so that something amazing happens to you. Yeah.
As you've been on this wild ride, though, you've also had some failures.
Oh, big ones.
So tell me about one of those
Oh,
failures.
and I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to love this. So back in 2000s, we built this company about tourism and beaches all over Spain, and with 5 friends, really dear friends. And the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, and so we burst with the bubble.
And you had put your money,
And we had put our money, our effort, our lives, our everything in there. So we basically from one day to the next, we owed a lot of money because at the time, you owed money, So I was very young. I think I was 21 or 22. And it was a very complicated time. And I remember getting together with the team and saying, okay, let's, it was a nasty time. Some of us never kind of rebuilt our relationship. We learned a lot, but, we did the analysis of these are all the things that can go wrong. Let's try to avoid it in the future. And I remember at the time I couldn't pay the bills of my groceries. And there was an amazing, big store in Spain called El Corte Inglés.
It was still an amazing big store in Spain.
An amazing big store. And I used to have the credit kind of card so I could pay groceries and then pay the following month. And I remember I was already married. I remember with my husband saying, okay, so how to avoid asking our parents for money, let's pay with El Corte Inglés card. And so we can, we get 4 weeks to see if we get a job so we can. And funny enough, in my last fund, the owners of El Corte Inglés invested on us.
Oh, what a full circle moment.
I told them, I was like, you're not going to believe what I'm going to say, but I've been on your kind of really dark side of the business for a period of time when I was an entrepreneur because you were the only ones that allowed me to buy groceries.
They threw you a lifeline.
And they were like, Laura, this is a fantastic story. Don't say it out loud.
And you said it here on this
But isn't that crazy?
series.
20 years after, they're my investors.
I love those full circle moments.
Yes.
And if you're awake and aware, you can see those dots connecting. Like that speech
well,
that
they are
Steve Jobs
entrepreneurs,
gave.
right? They are entrepreneurs
Absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's fascinating.
So there's going to be, the lesson is there's going to be big failures when you take a big swing.
So success is a result of so many failures. I mean, there's never success without failing hard. So now the problem is when you fail and you don't want to learn from that fail. But if you do an analysis of what went wrong, what are the decisions that I took, what could I have done instead, at the end, these are scars that you carry on in your life. There's a pattern recognition, and whenever there's a potential failure again, you detect it on time and you don't fall into the same trap. Do you remember the reading of falling into the same hole?
Oh, yes.
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 Yeah. So you start to kind of understand there's a hole here. Let me go around it. Now I learned, right? But you have to fail in order to succeed. So in the European culture in particular, also in the Latina culture, when people avoid talking about failures, when people don't want to hear about your failures, is a bad sign. Don't follow that lead, because that means that they...
And you're right. It's so cultural to us to
Yeah.
say he failed, don't give him another chance. Whereas in American culture, that's
It's
something
the
to be
opposite.
rescued. A person that files for bankruptcy is a person that you can then invest money in, and it's almost a battle wound that is respected.
It's a proof of, validation.
Yeah.
It validates you. Oh, she's been through a lot. She has the ability to recognize potential.
And honestly, to get back up, take
And that's
the
what
dirt
a lot of
off your
people
knees.
say, and I love that they say that. It's not the failure itself, it's how fast you go back up. That is that resilience, that grit, that is something that most entrepreneurs have, and it's the adrenaline of, oh my God, I made such a mistake. What can I learn from it?
And this is not going to get the best of me.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about what you're doing now with the Venture City, and what is perhaps one of the biggest challenges for people that run funds, which is how to deal with investors, how to deal with a board, and what are some of the tough decisions that you have had to make because of this project, this fund that you really believe in?
So it's interesting because the last 3 years have been most likely the worst years in venture capital in history. Way worse than what I went through in the 2000s when the dot-com bubble burst. It's interesting, in the last few years there has been a lot of people that have invested in funds for the first time. A lot of family offices, a lot of rich kids, a lot of people that really never understood that venture capital is a 10-year thing. This is not something, again, in the last 5 years, we've seen companies going from, 10 million valuation to 1,000 million valuation in 3 years. It was a very hysteric moment in the venture capital world, right? And in the entrepreneurs world, it was people, everybody thought, oh, you put money here and boom, you're gonna want to multiply it by 50.
There was this bonanza mentality.
It was a crazy thing going on. So, but for the ones that have been here for over 20 years now, we know that good businesses take a good deal of time to be built. And there are cycles that you can control that are not related to your business, but are more macroeconomic that you can control. There are pandemics. We didn't know that there was a pandemic coming, obviously. But there are a lot of factors external to your everyday in the business that affect deeply the business. And you need to, like a chameleon, you need to be able to see them coming, react fast, and keep doing what you know how to do best. And this is basically what has happened to us. In the last couple of years, we really wanted to launch our Fund 3 with 200 million, and we hit the road. We talked to a lot of investors. We talked to a lot of people. Many of them know us already for a long time, and they were like, but Laura, we want to see the full circle, because we were 7 years old.
Right.
We didn't have a 10-year full circle yet. And I was like, I know, the circle is closing soon. But right now, you have this opportunity to invest in my Fund 3. And we listened to the feedback, and we said, you know what? We're going to pause Fund 3 till next year, when we will have a couple of big exits. And in that moment, we will raise the next fund. You see? So sometimes, and that
was that tough for you?
It was tough because I couldn't maintain all my team members. With the moment that you plan for the team and for the budget and for everything in a year that a big fund is coming, the big fund didn't come. So I had to have the hard decision. I postponed it as much as I could to really I couldn't at the end. So I had to basically work with those that we couldn't keep in the team and help them find something amazing. I have to say that they found something amazing. They didn't need any of my help at the end, which is, makes me super excited for them. But it was a tough decision. I'm a builder. I don't like to go, I don't like to rewind. I am always looking forward, And so it was a tough decision, but it was a huge learning too. And so here we are, amazing portfolio, waiting for the exits to come. And hopefully we will be launching a biggest fund ever next year.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yes.
I have to ask you one final question before.
And by the way, not very many VCs tell you this. Not very many VCs recognize, I did this wrong. I should have planned in a different way. I didn't see the signs of the market coming. I didn't. I recognize that as a, not first time, because we have already 3 funds, 1 seed, 2 Series A, but I made the mistake of not seeing it in time. And then I had just to take the decisions fast and make it happen.
But there's so much intelligence and vision in the course correction.
There is.
And how you navigate that, because you're not always going to have the crystal ball. So even in that learning lesson, there's so much more integrity and there's so much more substance to the work you do and how you lead.
And honesty.
Absolutely.
I mean, hey, to your investors, to your teammates at the board level, hey, this is what I want to do. I really believe this is what we should do. And sometimes they don't share that with you. We think differently. It's time to do things in a different way. And sometimes, most of the time, things go my way. And from time to time, I have to just hear and learn and do something different, and that kind of continuous adjustment to context is what we entrepreneurs sometimes don't see. But at the end we do it because that's the way you build big companies, right? And big funds and big platforms. So that's the way to go.
And ones that stand the test of time, because you're not a venture capital tourist. You're here for the long haul.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. There's so many venture capitalists that have decided to move on into something different because this wasn't what they anticipated, because they weren't as successful as they used to be in their other jobs. And we're here for the long term. these are scars, tattoos that we have in our back saying, we made it through again. You know, the first one was the dot-com bubble and so many others, and this one we made it through.
Absolutely.
So this is how I think about it.
Can't let you go before we go to our lightning round without asking you about women leading funds and
Yes.
about women founders. So few of us still in this world. I think 1 in 4 funds is led by women in the U.S.
Yes.
3% of venture capital funds go
Yes.
to startups
Yes.
led by women. And those numbers have not moved, Lau.
Yeah.
What is it that needs to happen for this shift?
I love this question, Mariana. Oof, I'm gonna get all the energy
More
coming
energy.
in because so I've been many years trying to understand what's going on with this. I've met so many brilliant women all over the place in each of the jobs that I have had in Europe, in the US, in Latin America. I've met brilliant financial female brains all over the place. What is it that they cannot get to those pools of capital as to build those big funds? And I've worked with the European Women in VC, which is a huge organization, and I've been in the board of the European Innovation Council, which is a huge institution that reports directly to the European Commission with over 10 billion euro. And the conclusion is this: somehow we as women get comfortable with leftover capital. That means, I don't want to name big banks, but this big bank that has a pool of $1 billion to allocate to funds, and we have 100 million for minorities. And women go and take it. Excuse me, I want the 100 million. I don't want 5 million out of the 100. You know what I mean? And there's been $1 trillion, if you put all the capital that has been allocated into minorities and women all over the world for, let's give them something here, let's give them something there. I am sure it's more than $1 trillion. I'm sure that there's more than $1 trillion. I've never taken money from those pools, of capital. I think it's an insult that you're giving to a male with exactly the same abilities as me. 10 or 15 million, and you're giving me three or 400,000.
And then you somehow take it and you're happy about it. Thank you
And
for these crumbs. Thank you.
And you have to be happy about it. No more leftover capital, ladies. No way. Give me 10, give me 15, give me 25. It's proven. There's a lot of data. I'm very intuitive, but I'm also supporting my intuition with data all the time. I'm a little bit of a data nerd. But there's a ton of data from the BCGs of the world, the McKinseys of the world, the Harvard Business Schools, or whatever that says, a women managing capital returns way more than a gentleman managing capital. So what is it? And the question is this: it's mostly men allocating capital to women. We need to have women at the top of the pyramid. We need to have women high net worth individuals. In fact, there's an interesting fact. It's a sad fact, but it's an interesting that's happening now. We are in the widow area. This is a terrible thing, but it is. Most of the super billionaires and people that have built, and men that have built huge empires all over the world are dying. We are in a transition, in a generational transition right now, all over the world. What that means is that or they're getting divorced. That's the second one. You see with Melinda Gates, with Mackenzie Scott, right? So the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. So when they get the reins of the capital, they manage it in a completely different way.
And you hit on something critical, which is how do we also empower women in those positions to make smart decisions and to invest in more women?
Yeah.
Because I imagine those widows or those divorcees, because of the upbringing that we've had, maybe don't feel that they're capable of managing this
They're
money.
ultra capable of doing it.
Ultra capable, but surround yourself with women who will give you good advice, who will tell you invest in this and that, understand what you're investing in, and know that you're capable, and do not take any crumbs or leftover
No leftover capital from anyone, ever, ever, ever.
And if you're listening to this, invest in the Venture City. This is obvious. We're gonna finish with a little Latino lightning round.
Yes.
So Lau, You got to answer quick. I know
Okay.
that won't be a problem for you.
Yes.
First thing that comes to mind,
Okay, even if it's naughty?
even if it's very naughty, this is a good show for that as well. Sex, money, power, it's all related, is
Yes.
it not? Give me one word that describes your entrepreneurial journey.
Challenge.
Which trend, country, or sector in Latin America are you most excited about right now?
Chile, bio.
Who in the business world inspires you the most, dead or alive?
That's a tricky one.
La agarramos, por fin.
I'm not gonna give you a name, but I would say that young lady that it is right now in their 17, that is now 17 years old, that is thinking about what can I do for my career path, and that is looking options outside college.
Okay.
That is the one that inspires me the most right now.
If you could solve one problem in Latin America, I include Spain here,
Okay.
with the snap of your fingers, what would that be?
Talent. Good talent with access to good jobs.
What is your favorite Latin American or Spanish song to blast? And I know you are a music fanatic, to blast after you've had like a very hard day at work.
There's a song from Maria Dolores Pradera. I know that it sounds very like oldish, but I love Maria Dolores Pradera. What am I gonna do? What was the name of the song? That I put it in the shower very many times in
really?
the morning. Yeah. That talks about a gentleman. Dun, 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 dun.
We can all look up Maria Dolores Pradera.
It's coming. I can't remember the name of the song. Caballero. Dun, 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 dun. I love that song. I love it. I don't know why. It has a ring to it. You know, I love AC/DC too, but I love Maria Dolores Pradera.
And I can see the smile on your face. It changes your mood.
It is. It does. It does.
Last question. Favorite saying in Spanish that sometimes you can apply to business?
So, favorite sayings that I'm like, whoop, I have so many. You know, this one is a little bit, it's gonna sound very unpolite, but I'm gonna say it because I've said it so many times. Y una mierda pinchada en un palo, which means that by no means we're gonna be doing that. It's a horrible saying. I don't recommend anyone to learn from it, but I say it comes from me when I get angry about things, and I say, y una mierda pinchada en un palo. You know, I'm sorry, I had to say it.
And with that, we're going to finish this episode of our show. No, eres lo máximo. Thank you for making us smile. Thank you for your grit, your instinct, and your energy. I love what you're doing.
Yes.
The purpose of this show is exactly what you're doing, creating a platform, community, and purpose for people. Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias.